Okay, welcome all. It's 3 o'clock and let's start then the dot. Thank you all for joining early and for colleagues who are going to join us in the next minute or two. So I had a shock today morning. I have to be very honest. When I looked at the attendees list today, we had close to 300 plus registrations. And I'm sure that normally the way it works in all of webinars is there'll be at least 4 times the number of people who listen to. So, and these were the attendees. So I need to change the slides to accommodate all the attendees today. So for some of you, certain slides might be like, what is this? But for others, it might be interesting. But I've just tried to accommodate as many things. So welcome, whoever you are. And thank you so much for joining today's webinar. Many of you know that this is not the first time that I'm conducting this webinar. There are 30 plus webinars inside Scribble, but this is important for us and for you in particular, mainly because we are also give you a sneak preview of our Rain app as well, which we have been working softly over the COVID period. So thank you so much for joining today. As you know, all the attendees will receive our market report. Yes, when did we become a research company? I know many of my friends who joined today will be wondering when that happened. Yes, in this 1 year, there is also reports that we publish. There are 10 plus reports that's there, and we are going to share the summary report from the FM market. So that'll be there. So again, thank you very much for joining, and hopefully you could see my slides. And please do keep yourself active in the chat box. There are 50 plus slides. Normally I add the slides because that will also be a reading material for you later on, but I will not be covering every single slide in as much detail as I want to. So why are we here talking about this? And when I looked at the title of what opportunities are coming to in the market in the next 2 years or something, fast forward or go backward, this is what happened. So we were going with a normal schedule, or even we were going as a business normal schedule. COVID pretty much as a backstop, and some of you who have attended my previous webinar might know that I always start from here. So what happens here? Number one is there is a shock to the economy. We have colleagues today from government as well, from commercial services, cabinet office, government commercial function, NHS, and also local government. So welcome you all as well. So primarily there was a shock to the economy, and there is a reaction to the shock that we all are going through for the past 1 year. And now the reactions that we all did is going to be from there. So primarily, that's the important crux of the message that I want to land here, which means our reactions will dictate the market much more than what you anticipate the market to do. That applies to both the buyers and the providers. So while we are working through this, you'll be pleased to know that I'm not going to talk about the future of work or future of workplace. If somebody tells you that, I don't think, because nobody has gone to the work yet to demonstrate what work means. First of all, we all are locked down still, and that might happen in July, August, September, gradually. So that will take 6 months for us to settle in. And after that, let's talk about work. And also let's talk about the workplace. So what happened in this past one year is there was a lot of stuff that happened, and we have webinars on 1 month into COVID, 6 months into COVID, and 1 year into COVID. And this is just a one-snapshot. 100 plus contracts have been terminated at all forms to the other, and different buyers reacted differently to the challenges. That's the reason that happened. Some of the contracts got extended, some of the contracts, the scope was changed drastically. But underneath this, the employees on both sides, many went through furlough and, as you know, redundant. And the most heartbreaking thing is what the industry never anticipated that will happen to it. We also lost close to 300 plus fallen heroes. Still, there is no a detailed record of how many people have fallen, and the government is still waiting for the industry to share that. So if you are from the industry, which I know many of you are, please do share that to NHS England and others, so that at least they could do some sort of pointers that they could go for. Any questions, I will pick it up in the end. But for now, please do drop the questions there in the chat box before you forget. So what happens is this, when the market is changing as we speak, the commercial value of the contract also started to dip. This started in 2018, many of you know, when Caroline went under. After that, any contracts that any FM supplier or any supplier outsourcing provider wins, there is always a little dip in the market and it goes down, which means, hey, X company has won this big 100 million worth of tenders or 1 billion worth of tender. There is no excitement in the market because why? because the market inherently became risk and commoditized. What that means is there's not much excitement around it. How we know that, I'll also explain around it. And part of that, there were already companies who were stressed and distressed. COVID has accelerated it. And so with that note, this is another important thing which I want to learn. What that means is the interaction that you might have had with your buyers so far might not be the right way anymore, because the identity of your buyer is changing. Property, real estate, IT, asset management, then comes what you called, then comes the buildings and stuff. Everything is connected now, which means your buyer is trying to integrate as much as they can to work with you. And your buyer whom you used to work before not necessarily will be at the same level as you in the past, because now they might want to expect you to have even more intel, even more intelligence, even more solutions for them. So, but the most important thing is the buyer identity is changed. Secondly, the buyer power is also changed. So whoever comes on board has a lot more data underpinning what they want to go for. Of course, it's in the public sector, that might not be the case, but you will still find a lot of coordination that's happening there. So you might have focused on retention, which is good. I'll be dropping a few keywords like the observers, accelerators, and the survivors. Again, this is based on the reactions. Whether you're a buyer, whether you are a provider, or whether you're an investor, we all reacted to the market. So we have bucketed that into three, and you could test yourself in there. And the second one is virtual sales. We all are human socializing people, went on at it, and this 1 year has predominantly disturbed that social part of us as well, which means A, your buyer behavior has changed. B, your virtual sales is also happening, which means you need to have an anchor point. An anchor point means you need to have clear data point that said, who's running this contract, when is it expiring, and who's the stakeholder, so that you could have proper conversations with them. And that data set, which you used to do for pipeline boosting, became very more important, because in this 1 year, we did much more buyer and investor engagements than the service provider engagement. The point to note here is, if you're an accelerator, which you'll define in the next slide, the people are investing a lot more on the sales and marketing activity compared to what they used to do before. And people who are observers, again, I will divide, they are splitting 5%, and the survivors are the guys who are going incremental here. So this is the definition. So survivors is, yes, we all were defense. We all were playing defense for the past, between March, when it happened last year, all the way up to April, May, June. But then when there is a light in the tunnel that, things started to come back in August, when the restaurants were open, extra, there was light in the tunnel. So some people start to position themselves, but others continue. So that's where people start to separate themselves. So you will know, we all went through the same personal experience, company related. Many of you might have changed jobs. Many of you might have gone through challenges in your work or in the renewals contract, so and so. So either way, at some point, the survivors will move into observers, and the observers will move into accelerators. And today, most of you who is joining this call will not be a survivor. If you're a survivor, there is no way you're going to join this call. You are somewhere between an observer and an accelerator, which means I've observed the market enough, now I'm going to accelerate. Or I've accelerated the market, or I'm about to accelerate, but I just want the data or relationships to confirm whether I'm in the right direction. That's where you are. So you can try our scorecard to find it. But when we did this analysis, we spoke to 130 plus senior level stakeholders, predominantly FM, 80% FM, but also on the wider outsourcing. As you know, outsourcing and FM in UK bucketed as business services. This is the metric as of November. This is when the vaccine was announced, AstraZeneca, Pfizer was announced in December. We all went to lockdown, but then there was light. It's going to finish up as early as just before Easter, and we all will be back to normal. And those people, so what that meant is, with that thought, 9% of the market is in acceleration. So you could whoever you are, you could guess from the reactions from your company where you stand, but you could also go to the target. From our analysis, 9% of the providers, the top 85 providers, were planning to accelerate. And most of them are observing clearly, even we were observing, we were not going to accelerate, but we were just preparing ourselves to accelerate. And then there were providers who got stuck, as I mentioned, because the industry that they were, it could be retail or it could be anything that related to hospitality. When they're specialized in those things, they got stuck because nothing much could be done. So they were in the survivor board. That's the reason many of the, not just FM players, but many other players also are slightly more stressed and distressed than what they used to be. So understand people have reacted differently, and then if they continue to observe, they will fall back as survivor. If they continue to survive, they'll go bust. And if they wrongly accelerate, then they might come down as well. So this is the thing that you might need to keep in mind. Again, before we even go even further, every provider here, I'm sure there are many of you here, and also there are buyers, but let's just focus on the providers. If you're a BD manager or a chief exec or a sales director, etc., you know how you have positioned yourself in the market as a hard FM player, soft FM player, security, catering, cleaning, bundled services, CAFM provider, many of the high-end provider with real estate background might be positioning themselves as transaction management. Either way, or people will be going much more high level or asset management. So the point here is providers are now trying to elevate themselves from one level up. I don't want to do cleaning alone. I don't want to do security alone. I'm bundling it. I've bundled it enough. Now I want to go for integrated FM. I'm doing hard FM and integrated FM. Now I want to go slightly more value-added services, energy. And I've done energy and I've done IFM, and I want to do even more, positioning the people on data analytics and so on. So people are migrating from one bucket to the other. Again, if you look at what's being procured is very different, but how you are positioning yourself. So that's a stress test that we're going to do together. The reason for this introduction is I haven't even introduced myself. I am Bhaskar. I run 3 companies with the portfolio of Baachu. So you might see me as a very different level. Some of you might see me from Baachu Rain, which is our FM research portal. Some of you might see me as a podcaster. We have a top 10% Apple podcast, 2 podcasts. Some of you might see us as Scribble, world's largest learning platform. Some of you might see as a government advisor, and so on. At the end of the day, there is always relationships, and I believe in humanness in how we approach. So many of you who come to it, most of you might know me already, but if you don't know, this is B. Thank you for joining. So, and behind Baachu is a genie. Behind Baachu is this little boy. The identity of Baachu is pretty fluid, and it's still fluid. So what happens here is, if you have this, I don't know, you do this, it's because of this, because we position, you will find it very, and we don't define the company by the product or service we sell, we define the company by the people we serve. That means most of you might see us very differently, but that's Baachu, that's our mascot. It's me when I was little, not little, when I was young. So that's it. So he's saying hello. So this was me when I was a lot more chubby, when I was 29 years old. So let me get into the actual details. What happened here is 2009-10, I was promoted as head of business development for Circo, and from here I was asked to build up sales pipelines. So I have no idea, because I came from a commercial background and bid management. So when you suddenly are asked to do sales pipeline, you just start to position yourself. How am I going to do this whole thing? So you start to build some frameworks, you start to put full things, and you start to do. The important point here is most of you might be here waiting, understand here is, how am I going to achieve my in-year revenue target? That was the question that I tried to answer. And then, like the challenges that you face, these are the questions that I need to go for. If you are a sales and BD development director, these are some of the questions that you find. How to achieve my new revenue target? My opportunities in the pipeline is not good suffice for me to attain my targets. How to strengthen my pipeline? How to improve my win rate, etc. I had the same challenges as you do. But what happened was, when I left Circo in 2014, when I was starting to do work, I started to build pipelines for people. Public sector, private sector, not just FM, but a lot more opportunities in there. The team that I set up came back to me, and that's how Baachu was formed. So we were pioneering sales pipeline development here in UK, and you'll be surprised the companies that we work with, most importantly, the relationship that we go for. These are the companies who have multi-million pound sales in BD budget, but still there was something stopping from happening. And the inputs that we were collected were going on in this way, which is going to be, who are the sectors, what are the incumbent, etc. So gradually we collected more and more information. At the next level, we collected the stakeholder information and so and so. Without realizing, we came out with our own methodology of, okay, you build the pipeline, then you qualify the pipeline, then you go back and find a little bit more intelligence, and we help you to succeed. So while we were doing that, specializing on this, then the stakeholder changed, and the marketing director, strategy director came on, hey, I want to do this. market size and so on. So again, even though we were not a research company, we weren't positioning ourselves as a strategy consulting company. They were burning their hands on some twisted data and some very top-end consulting companies who were just approaching generically. So we learned our art there, and we positioned and helped the manager there. And then it was the chief exec of how can we position the independent assessment of the market with them. So with all the data points that we collected, we started to serve different stakeholders, the buyers. With the supply chain that we have today, we might need new, fresh suppliers in the market. Can you help us? If so, what they have done, what are the other procurements, how have they procured, etc. It's all came from the same data set that we have. Then came the investors 2018 after Caroline, and we lost a lot more money with Caroline ourselves because we were providing sales pipeline and market strategy support for Caroline ourselves. So the point here is the data set helped us to serve a lot more stakeholders that we wanted to, and it happened organically. And that's how the company was formed. So what we realized was, there is this underpinning 11,000 plus data set that helps us to work with many of the leading suppliers and I wouldn't say so many of the leading providers, many of my friends in the industry. And then when I was working with them, when they moved on, we just went on with them. And today we have done pretty much most of the top strategic providers, including elements of government and a lot of work with the investors and analysis. So this is the challenge. We have a twisted data, and then there is an endless of data coming. And most importantly, there's a trust deficit at all levels. So when we are going to have this conversation with anybody, you just need to start with a starting point. We have pumped all these things inside Rain in the webinar format, articles, report. There are some briefings and analyst sessions. There is a database. It's an Excel format, but now we are going to look at the Rain. And then lots of one-to-one conversations. It's all there behind bespoke research elements. So the reason I'm giving all these things is why do I need to listen to you? What credibility do you have to talk what FM means to you? And this is the reason. While we are building this part of ASH together, we work closely with a lot more stakeholders, a lot more forums in bringing this one view of the market to address the trust deficit. Because everybody is doing good things, but how can we help them? How can we connect the sellers to the buyers? How can we connect the investors to the right people with data, with neutral data? So before I go any further and we open up the Rain app, I just want to quickly, rather than me speaking, I'm going to open the poll now, just for 2 minutes, just to answer this one thing. Because I've looked at the attendees list, close to 80% of you have sales director, business development manager, business development director, chief exec MDs as your title. So please do go and do this one little poll for 2 minutes, and then we will begin from there. Poll is now open. I'm going to open it for 2 minutes. Please do have a go. Another 30 more seconds, if you can. Five more seconds, then I'll stop. Thank you. So I'll share the results. As expected, as you know, the reason why you are here is because you are moving from observer category to accelerator category, and it's proved. So 46% of you have suggested that you are going to go organically, which is what we're going to talk about, what tenders are going to come in the market, by up to 20%. And there are similar number of people who are planning to accelerate even further. I'm sure for the past 1.5 years, they might not have done enough. So you're going to accelerate. So it's beautiful and brilliant. And some of you are actually going to acquire companies. Again, as I mentioned, there are lots of stressed assets in the market, and the survivor, there's a lot more that you could do for you. So this is my, thank you for doing it. So I'll quickly share the results. Hopefully you can see the results. So what you have here is this. So predominantly nice to have accelerators and observers joining the community here. Welcome. Let's move. Thank you so much. So let us go. moving back to the slides again. So what happens here is, I know many of you are looking into this. Why are we doing this? Why do we need to have the data set that we're talking about? Because the tenders are coming left, right, center. Many of you in the public sector might know that you have an overdue tracker and you opportunities go for, but what you won't know that is none of the overdue tracker. We just waited from 2010 when I was an employee for Circle to now 2020. I was waiting for one company to come out with a strategic pipeline or a strategic planning based on the tracker. Still to date, I didn't find anything. So that kind of helped me to create our own market here. But the underlying principle is, yes, there are opportunities that's going to come in the market. We are going to look now, but it's much more important, as you know, both as a buyer and as a provider. So we have friends from CCS today. They have already started the Crown Commercial Services market engagement. Why? Because it's going to expire in the next 18 months. They're starting now so that they will have a much robust, resilient, and rich supply chain. Same thing for you. You might be looking, many of the contracts, again, take it with a pinch of salt, many contracts in 2020 were extended, you got procured differently, but it's important for you to also see, whether the contract might come in the same form. It also helps you to shape it. Looking into the budgets, if you bid tactically, you only have close to 20 to 30% to win, because incumbents tend to win quickly. That's the reason it's important for us to understand who are the incumbents, where possible, what's the contract duration, why do we need to do that, so that you can pick your battles carefully. And it also helps you to understand if your main competitor has 20 bids next year, they will be busy renewing the contract, whereas you go and pick up projects that are outside the thing that they go for that have more chance of winning. So you could apply that in multiple forms. People say capture. And also what you can see here is, if you're a strategic planning, it's also important for you to get to the view of 5 years, what you're going to do. Of course, the opportunities might vary, but the market won't be drastically different. People will be incrementally shifting, as we talked about. So having the 3-year outlook, these are the projects, this is how they are outsourced, this is how they were bought, these are the competition, might help a lot more. So many of you might have already done strategic planning, but that's the basis. Then you allocate the budget. So the reason for that is I did found a lot of colleagues with the title bid managers. I'm sure you would now know what a capture is and how we can position this. But because of a buyer and a provider, it's important for you to position this. Why am I talking all these things now and not last week or this? People who have came to the workplace future or something, we have an identity crisis within FM today, which means every one of us are reacting differently. We talked about the buyers, we talked about the providers, and the buyers is a generic term. Inside the buyers, you have private and public. Inside private, there is a lot more players. Inside public, there are a lot more players. They all are pulling the industry in many different ways. This is why it's important for you to have conversations with people to understand what do they perceive as the market, and see how you can position yourself into their future, rather than to just say, this is my product, this is my service, am I here, I bucketed myself in this area, this is what we need to do. So we are having conversations with people, I'm sure you're having the conversation, but please do keep that in mind. To make it worse, in this past 1 year, what was explicit is, when there is a 3-way conversation between the government, the industry, and the SMEs, there wasn't an industry body that could have helped to navigate it. It was explicit. We were able to step in to fill some of those gaps, but you also need to understand your battle is going to be a lonely battle for some time, unless we launch our own memberships and you can join there. But we are in this time, and I found this interesting. I wish I can do this, which means, we are stuck to a certain extent, and we all are finding our own ways. We just want to get out of the market and do it. But the point here is, it's not just you who are going through this. There are a lot more people who are going through this. And I love this quote, and I always use this quote. The point here is, you're not on your own. Everybody is trying to do this. There is a consensus between the market that you need to firm out. And then there is this unique differentiator that you need to build on for your competitiveness. But what's happening now is that consensus of what the FM market stands for is now totally lost, which means everybody is pulling the market here. That's the reason we are launching this, to build up a forum to just take it even more further. So we have the data, we have the relationship, what next? Yes, I'm entering politics. No, I am not. The point here is, there is a need for the intelligence, but the intelligence, it's expensive because we are pumping in a lot of data. By the time we close it, somebody else is renewing a contract, somebody else is winning a new contract, and that needs to be updated all the time. You as a BD person, you as a salesperson, you as a buyer, it's going to be challenging for you to keep on track of what's happening in the market. Especially, you might get this false assurance that I have the public sector, I'm spending money on public sector trackers, I know this. Not really. I can tell you that private sector even less. So it's pushed us to go for the Rain app. We were like, okay, we have done as much as we can. We had a false start in 2018 when we came out with an app, with a CRM type of a tool, but we got burnt ourselves big time when we were firefighting on a survivor with Caroline. We also launched a technology version and we pulled back, and now we are back with a different thing. So we are not going to compete with anybody else, but we have created our own niche. But I'll just share the Rain app. So let's just go through the opportunities live. But before I do that, a quick recap. You're going to have this, many of you, if you're part of the Baachu insiders, as we call it, you might know this. There's a split in the market, even split in the market. There are research reports, please be careful. There are research reports that tells you UK market is $42 billion. The moment you see dollar sign, you know that they don't know the market. I'm not going to name them. There are people who are just going to tell you this is the market value, but we build up the market based on contracts. Every single contract, who runs what's the average value of the contract, what's the real value of the contract. When we build it up, which means we can go every single contract to say, hey, you know what, that 118 billion that we're talking about is made up of this. We can go to distill in that. So, and that's the reason today we are coming confidently and talking to you. Otherwise, we would not be. We will be just simply boosting the pipeline, because important is when you base the decisions, you just need to base it on the right data points. So you might not be playing in all the markets, but you might be playing in selected markets. And there are lots of SME friends here who have joined as well. You might not be focusing on the sectors. You might be focusing on the region where you play, or you might focus on specialist services, etc. But we will touch. We have sliced the market in any different form. But the important point here is, if you are a private provider, then commercial buildings, which has got hampered big time in this 1 year, is still the largest player. And in the government side, central government will be the large player, out of which CCS framework. But you can't have any opinions on that. But at the end of the day, they are the de facto authorities, and it's important for you to be part of the next iteration. If you're already part of the iteration, good. Go big time in this second iteration. Then the second player is the local government there, and then you have the manufacturing industry. And between these four sectors, 2/3 of the market is there. So anything else is just churns here. But also, this data point is based on contract value above £500,000. So nobody knows what a £10,000, £50,000, £100,000 local contracts have been done, because we don't know. Because those things are not published. We are not going and interviewing everybody and asking, tell me your suppliers, who's winning what contract. We only monitor what's being published, and the people who publish tend to publish large, bigger contracts. That's it. So as I mentioned, the point to note here is what's been bought is different by sector, by service. So when you're positioning yourself, I am X, I am Y, you need to be slightly careful. This is what they have been procuring today. So this might change in the future. That's where it's important for you to talk to people and say, hey, you have procured an IFM service, but we may need to change that to X service, Y service. It's entirely up to you, but it's having an understanding will be super important. This is a breakdown that tells you offices, totally integrated FM, whereas you can see the government split up, still procuring separately. Then you can also have, again, in the private sector, it moves on the other side, on the manufacturing as well. So what you also find is, this is why you are here, and you will also find the deal volume, which is like, okay, I know those sectors have a big volume, but I know some of you might be going for less projects with a bigger turnover, and some of you might be going for smaller turnover projects, but a lot of volume. So this is another snapshot that tells you, hey, if you are looking for a small churn, but a lot of projects, then you may need to go for these two sectors. But offices, you cannot get away from offices. It's there for you to play. For the next 3 years, this is how it's going to be. So these are some of the numbers that we'll be touching in the live app. But for now, this is it. But what are the upcoming contracts that might come both in the public and private sector, and what differentiation that's going to go for? If you look, as you know, this is where the market is caught. You might be playing in a different segment, but if you decided to play in a certain sector, you might need to understand that sector doesn't procure in any big bang. So they will procure in smaller churns with local suppliers, or they might procure smaller works every now and then. So whether they are going to consolidate and come back is the conversation you need to go for. But your starting point is different industries procure differently. It could be public or private. And based on that, the number of contracts that's going to come out will be slightly different. As I mentioned, 2020, many of the contracts that was expiring in the past 12 months and the next 12 months is renewed. And it's also been shaped with less volume, or because of the churn, or in certain sectors like NHS or critical infrastructure, it's actually increase in volume. IT telecoms increase in volume. But what you find here is, yes, we know these projects exist, but for the past 1.5 years, that the actual opportunities is renewed. And I'm sure that many providers might have renewed it for 3 years minimum, some for 5 years, but some buyers will say, hey, I don't know where that goes. It might be reduced even further. So let's go and have a look at the Rain app before I talk anymore. Stop share, and let me go. How are we all doing? Did I drain you up? Sorry. As you can see, when you play with technology and apps, you are at the mercy of that. So I hope it comes up. Bear with me for a minute. But let me, while this is happening, yes. So this is my version, but when you log in, you will get a different version. As you know, what we have done here is there were a lot of questions, as you mentioned, from the buyers, from the investors, from the marketing directors, sales directors, chief exec, but why can't we put everything together in one place so that we could start to use that as a portal to give the answers. So what's inside Rain? As I mentioned, with all the projects that we have been doing, we used to have this in an Excel format, but now we have consolidated and we have added it here. So as promised, what are the, very quickly, and this won't be in any, we are not here to create a customer experience technology-based high frontier. Important point here is data. As long as the data is robust, as long as the data gives you decision, that's why we are here. We are making this as a decision platform rather than a glossy platform. That's a starting point for us. So if you have opinions on the dashboard look and stuff, please do share with us. We are willing to amend and do. But what happens here? What are the type? What are the services? Who is the customer? What's the market sector? And who is the provider, small or big, in what we know? So when we know that, then on the other side, we're also going to go and have a look at the duration of the contract where possible, annual value of the contract where possible, end date, and the total value, and it continues. Where we are unable to extend, we are normally going to look. And as you can clearly see, there are some contracts that's there, but the point here is not all contracts you will have all the data points, but in what we know, this is it. So let me go back, and I'm sure there are some filters that I was playing before I came on board. Let me reset everything so that you could have a look. Just bear with me, as you know, like in any IT demo with live, it just goes on. So what happens here is this is a raw data set. When we kind of look into the data, you're going to find a split. In parallel, when we get a request to have a specialist sector or something, we just do that project and then we update the database. Otherwise, we just scan the market on a monthly basis. We just go and update the data set. We have an automated crawler that look and it consolidates, and we put a QA and then we update the dashboard. But otherwise, based on the request, we do it. But the more and more because Rain app is going to go live soon, and the more and more people who get access to it, you will get your own dashboard, and it also connects to Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics. So our plan is, here we go. Every now and then I'm going to come on board and get answers to all the questions that I talked in the past. What's the market size? What's changing? Who's winning? Who's not winning? Who was not winning? We don't know who's winning. What did they win, etc. And then that will be updated here. And this is the public sector and the private sector split that we talked about from the presentation, and this is how the dashboard is structured. So we can go line by line, and we can have a quick demo of, okay, I want to know just the private sector opportunities in hard FM. Look. Right. And I'm going to apply it. Okay, what is the private sector hard FM opportunities that's going to expire? And I'm not going to expire or look at the data set yet, but let me at least get a feel for, I play in hard FM and I play in the private sector. You could go even more granular in the sector that you want to go for, but let's take a stab on, okay, what's the hard FM opportunities that we need to go for in the private sector. As you can see, it's thinking. So it will find you a dashboard, and the dashboard is going to tell you, hey, these are the opportunities, and these are some of the structures that we need to go for. It was working until now in a typical way. Yeah. So this is the problem. When you stuck with data, you just stuck with data. When you go on and become yourself. Okay, here we go. The data is gone. What we done? Okay, we know 58 billion was the overall market, but here we know in the private sector, hard FM alone, there is close to 10.3 billion. And you can really see in the market, who are the guys who are procured hard FM only. You could also get a good snapshot on different sectors, what they're doing, categorization, and how they work with. So you can keep on doing that for bike. As you know, instead of doing it by hard FM, you could go back and now go and say, I want to have the opportunities that's expiring in 2023. Then simply, it just goes back and it picks. So what it means is this just becomes your decision tool, and you can also filter it by provider. Hey, and what are the contracts, who's running what contract. You could have an access to the dashboard. And so every month we just crawl it, we do it, but depending on the access, depending on this, we'll do it fortnightly. But as you know, it's based on publicly available information. There's no point crawling every other week when nobody tells who they win. But as you can clearly see, after 1 year, there is a lot of new wins that's coming to the market. So people are starting to accelerate. It's important for you to understand what's happening inside. So what we looked here is, okay, we know that there are hard FM opportunities in the private sector, out of which, guys, 2023 is going to be a big year because many of the opportunities are going to hit the market. And what are the opportunities that's going to come and hit the market? It's here. Again, not all, again, I stopped the filter on hard FM, but if you go and look, you can filter it on hard FM, then you can also have a look specifically on the opportunities here for the end date for your chosen sector. It helps you before you make big budget decisions on, am I going to invest on this bid? As you know, before you invest on a bid, there's a cost. Before you invest on any sort of analysis, what we call a capture, intelligence analysis, in course, this is something that you go for. Obviously, you might have a lot more intel about a particular client, which you add in your CRM. And this is the meeting, this is the thing, etc. But what this add is an additional tool to just check whether we have something that you don't have, which is we keep on crawling it, because you as a BD stroke sales person, as a buyer, as a chief exec, you need to drive your company forward, not just to do research and track who's won what contract, who's procuring what contract, when is it going to come for renewal, etc. So it's important. And that's the underlying principle behind this tool. So it has different data points, and it kind of helps you. That is segmentation wise, we are segmenting even further as we speak, by even more specialist services, and we're also going by regions as we speak. But this is the Baachu Rain app, which we have. Simply, it just helps you to just understand who's running what contract and what is the business model. That's the one question that it answers. So that's it. So that's what I just want to share on the app-wise. So let me stop the share and I'll come back to the slides and keep your questions coming. And I will continue with the slides and I will pick up the answers there. So we had a quick look on the slides on the data. So primarily what it is whatever we have done in the past, we have just consolidated it with public and private, and that's it for you. And the AI, the reason for the crawling is, as you know, we spend a lot of money on researching ourselves. By the time we researched, found it, somebody won the contract, somebody renewed the contract, that supplier is bought by another supplier. So even if you go back and find the projects that Caroline, if you go and have a look, Caroline, the PLC, the projects that was outsourced to Caroline, if you go and check, it's very challenging for you to understand what projects were given to who. But we know those projects were outsourced to Caroline. When it comes back to the market, with the industry knowledge, you will definitely know. But if you're looking at it from the face value, it's quite challenging. And you will find, I have friends from Italian Service today, and a few other companies, Arthur McKay, which they acquired a few years ago, that project was given to Arthur McKay. So are we going to cleanse the data and make Arthur McKay as Italian Service Caroline into ONG or Caroline into Serco? And it's not, yes, we can keep on doing it, but the important point is who runs what contract and what's the business model. So it's important for us to capture who won the contract. And then once we do a bespoke study, then we go and refresh it. So if you look, yes, it's categorized by sectors, it's categorized by services. The question that I found just before I came in was, at the moment, we are regionalizing it and we are planning to do it. We have UK-wide national, but we're planning to have local government and devolved regions, because we are starting to work on with a lot of SMEs now. At least we have 4 projects that's going on this month alone on SMEs. It's based on different geographies of UK. And we are getting the data points as we speak. And then we are moving into Europe. We have already crunched the data. We just need to quality check and we need to add it. Same for US as well. What that means is this will become the global database. But is it just going to be FM? End of the day, as I mentioned, if we can do it for FM, we can do it for everything. Because we started, the very first few projects which we did is for justice, healthcare, welfare type of projects. FM, we have done a lot more projects, 2/3 of the projects. But when you start to build it. Our plan here is not to come out with another tracker, but just to come out with the contract database, so that even the government can utilize and understand, hey, who's running what contract. At the moment, I'll be surprised if even the UK government has those information. I might be wrong, but it could be the case. So, and that's the plan. So we are extending the geography. We are internal here in UK, outside UK. We are going to Middle East. We have done specific studies on Middle East and Asia as well. But those are one-off studies. Australia, ASPAC, Canada, as you know, we have done studies there. But as you know, if you are going to churn this consistently, it depends on the volume. So that's it. So as I mentioned, we have done it manually, but now we are set up to do it a lot more. And the cool stuff here is, once we realize this is where, when the marketing team and others, when we start to look into that, hey, you know what, it's all good. We have the data, right? We don't want too much data. Today morning, I had a conversation with a very close friend. He said, you're bombarding with too much data. And I'm sure he's attending the call. He might be laughing with this. It's not about it. We have to help you to qualify. But once you qualify, as you can see in the project, you then need to reach to the prospects. So what it does is, once you identify the stakeholders, then it's, you might have the stakeholder name within your CRM, but what are the likes of your stakeholder? What are they liking in social media? If they have if they are an SME, I'm sure they are posting a lot of stuff. And SMEs, why this is important, because many of you, not all projects is outsourced or delivered by the big players. They win the contract and then they pass on to the local suppliers. Social value, as you know, is big. So it's important for you to understand this. Plus, it's important for you to understand what your stakeholder is talking to about strategy reports, so and so is fine. But having that rich data about your stakeholder, from social media, that's the previous slide, from social media, from Quora, from websites, from podcasts. We have beautiful stories from some of the senior stakeholders, both within government and industry. You could go and listen. What do they stand for? Why do they do what they do? And when you then connect that, when you get a bid, this is our capture bot. We are proud of this. And when I then connect to, I know the project, I know the stakeholder within, and now when I am bidding this opportunity, I want the bot to monitor the intelligence, anything about the competitor, anything about the customer, anything about the stakeholders, and come out and share that with me. Which means while I'm having my negotiation meeting, my details with the clients here, dialogue meetings, bid meeting, etc., I might not know what they're happening. They might be acquiring, they might be doing something else. It just becomes a rich data thing. So our plan is not to go as a daily tracker, but our plan is just to be a trusted decision-making thing. And this is what we'll be adding more and more. You will be, this is new, and thanks for people who have stayed so far. You are going to benefit from even more. And in these 12 months, we have been asked to do benchmarking. This is totally new because we have built a trusted relationship between the investors and some senior buyers in the offices, banks, and now with the government. If you can clearly see, there are benchmarking quadrants that's available in the IT sector, but that's not available in our sector. But guess what? Every single one of you who are accelerating have your own technology solution. Every single one of you wants to take it to a customer, share that story. But there is a requirement for the neutral provider to just look into that, put the providers into a quadrant and tell them these players are magic quadrant, these players will be magic quadrants, these players are building technology, so they are going to pick. We have been asked to do that, and I'm pleased to share some of our members. We have Mighty as our founding member. As you know, if you are interested in being a member, you can. So we haven't even opened up. It starts in June. So we will be starting to benchmark leading top 85 suppliers. And members get a lot more access to the data and a lot more access to how we are going to benchmark. But what that means is it will be much stronger value proposition when you take it to the market that says, hey, we are benchmarking globally. And why? We have built the reason for me to spend 20 minutes on credibility is I'm not going to stand and share this if I don't believe in we can add value. In this 5-6 years, we have worked with a lot of suppliers, with investors and with buyers. And now it helps us to say, hey, we are bringing it all together. Then comes this. We talked about it. This, either way, this is just a slide that I put forward, obviously. So whatever you need, we are here to help. And then these are the reports that's available. And this is what I want to share. The point here is, we need a common forum. We need a common forum because, today morning I was speaking to friends at Cabinet Office. It's just like, hey, we are going to come up with a new way of working post-COVID, but it's challenging for them to bring in. We have friends at BSA who have it, but BSA is much wider. There is no FM forum. So we have created a lot of roundtables between the buyers and our members. And it also becomes like, once the insight comes back, the reports that we want to go for should not be published every year. The report should be refreshed every quarter at least. And you have the industry reports that's been coming on, which is done 2020, 2017, 22, whatever the timeline is. Let me tell you, by the time it gets printed, it's outdated. We know that. So we want to come up with dynamic insights, as articles, as webinars, as reports. And and we just want to refresh it at least twice, and we just want to share the details of where the market moved consistently every year. And we cannot do that ourselves. We just need to do it with you, and that's the journey that we have here together. And we started initially with observers, accelerators, test yourself here, and this is my final landing point before I open for questions. The market is much more fragmented by the services that you provide, and is much more fragmented by the reactions that providers have done so far and the reactions you're going to go. I'm so happy and pleased to see close to 80% of the attendees today have said that you're going to increase up to 20% or even more organically. Brilliant. It's important for you to understand that the polarization will continue. Your buyers are changing, and it's important for you to exploit growth in a much more strategic way. When you do that, there'll be lots of data that will be thrown at you, but please do ensure that the decisions that you make is being done with proper insights in mind. And if you are able to do that, then we believe within this 1 year, at least 10% is possible. But if more and more survivors continue to survive, then that's the growth for accelerators to become the 20%. And not everybody will achieve 20% because of the way market is structured. But there will be gaps in the market, exploited gaps. use, refresh the data where possible, use us where possible. The point here is, the gap will be widened. The top 85 that exists today, 3 years down the line, the top 85 will not exist. And the providers that you're going to see in the market will be very new. We are seeing some new entrants from US, and we are seeing some technology-driven companies who haven't done any FM now entering FM. The basic IT services providers, this is a shocker. One of the largest bank has appointed their IT infrastructure provider, the guys who have provided laptop for them, IT services for them, as their FM supplier. This is a multi-million contract. Why? In their mind, IT stroke property is going to be digital. What's the point going with an FM provider who talks digital? I will go with a digital provider who can talk FM. So wait for the large IT BPO companies to crash the market and wait for the last FM players to position themselves. It's going to be super interesting how you all are going to position. So that was the last point that I want to stand. The point here is when you're having the conversation with the buyers, this came along all the time. They are like you and me, isolated, working from home, and they have their own challenges. The procurement has asked them to procure it in the same way. And the suppliers have been asked to, as you know, with the BD people, you have to go and win your contracts in the same way. But have conversations without any agenda. Just have conversations is like futuristic conversations. Who would expect us to do voice of customer service? In the past 1.5 years, we have done 12 voice of customer service. We are not a traditional NPS stroke survey players, but the reason is because we have the data points. We were asked to go with the buyers and then say, hey, we run this contract for you, but we just want to get your view of the market in a neutral way. And because we have the data points, we were able to add that point into the data points and come back with this. There are some accelerators who are making a very smart move. I was saying, hey, I can sit and come out with a value proposition, spend thousands, hundreds of thousands of budgets to understand what it means without having a single conversation with a buyer. Whereas some companies are like, what, I'm going to keep my website as it is. I'm going to keep my social media as it is. Let me go back and speak to the buyer and say, hey, you are my buyer. We have been working with you for 5 years. We do NPS survey with you. But let us talk much wider. What you see is the market. Where do you see this is going? Where do you see us in the journey? In addition to, are we doing okay? What's our service measures, etc. It's all there. When you have the conversation, it's important. But we are there if you need. But I'd stop there and let's open up for questions. Let me stop share. Right. Question. Let's see. From the top. Hope it was useful. Thank you. Thanks for staying so long. It's great. And whoever is going to see the recording, thank you for at some point. So, question, will it be possible to get a video of this presentation after as my CEO wasn't able to run? Of course, 100%. We will have the recording and I'll share the presentation to all the attendees, not to the registrants, but only to the attendees. How did you estimate the market size? Yes. Okay, I will have a look at that when I send it. The market size, what I shared today, will change tomorrow. So this is based on what we found out as when we did a snapshot as of, I think it was February end or something, that's it. When we change it, keep on changing. Again, when we came to know what are the contracts that have been extended, how long, which is going to be coming out in the next 3 or 4 months, because many providers will be starting to share or many buyers will be starting to come on, the numbers will change. That's the thing. So don't be stuck like UK. We believe if you add the projects less than £500,000, UK market is worth at least 150 billion. It's worth at least 150 billion. When you add anything that happens at the smaller 50K to 250K to 500K level, and that changes all the time. And that's what we want to address. It's not going to be static. It's going to grow 3%. It's going to go 5%. I'm sorry. If somebody tells you why, how, tell me now. You know what? It's all junk. Please don't fall for the trap. That's it. So we estimate the contract based on the contract size. Nest. Yeah, fine. Does this include data from outside the market? Yes, Sunil, it does include. No, this dashboard doesn't include, but as I mentioned, we have done projects, but based on the volume of the project, as you know, data is expensive. We already pumped in £280,000 just on the research. Then on the app, further £150,000. So $500,000 already spent on UK alone, and we need to categorize it, monetize it. But if you want to go further, Definitely, we have plans. We already got the data, but whether we need to consistently monitor the data will be project-based. So how did you find the information? Thank you, Lucy. So we just, in the public sector, they do contract awards, and both on the buyer side, so we track that. And on the provider side, they do say, X person, you can see if you're subscribed to my good friends IFM.net and other FMJ and others, you will find people say all the time, X company has won X projects and stuff. Simply, we just go grab that and put that in our dashboard. And then we compared, is this being outsourced in the past? We still keep it as a separate contract, and we still keep the old contract. So we just crawl all the time. So that's it. So anymore, thank you. It would be interesting to see which segments decrease, increase over time based on the market size. Yes, that's a very good question. What was thought as a commoditized service, like cleaning, went up more. When we did a survey last year with what we call the unprepared survey with 12 buyers in the city, one comment came strongly, which is like, Bhaskar, we have more cleaners and engineers in our 3-story building than the traders or the employees. And you just need to wait for that to happen. So what that means is, many FM providers, who would have thought we went to this shop? We all transformed, we all were agile, we all did our best, and we'll continue to do it. And the same thing for the buyers as well. We just need to give them, they all want some employees to come on board, different surveys, say different things. At the end of the day, I don't expect 50% of the workforce to go back to the office, and the balance percentages will be spending somewhere between 1 to 5 days in there, So, or some percentage says that even up to 70%, because everybody managed to work, unless you are part of the critical service, everybody managed to work, which means the future of workplace, as they call it, or the future of workplace services. I'll be scared if somebody says, workplace services today, this is what we are going to do for you. Please don't, because let people get back to work, let people settle there, understand what isn't working, what is working, then position your service. Having a 2-meter sticker, having a sensor, having this is tactical, which is good. But how can we go more? Capita has some amazing work on that recently, where they elevated themselves away from FM into how they could provide which resources in which building when. So there are a lot of providers, CBREs, JLLs, because real estate is big for them, productize some of the services. You're going to see all these things, whether these will be monetized or whether this will be technology that people talk about where you will never see them making life. It's also very high because there is a lot of noise in the market. The reason we are starting benchmarking is really to understand all the technology that people are talking about. Is it really been implemented? If so, where? And what has been done with it? That means it goes in. But there is a lot of, like what we have done with the Rain app. It's a new way of working. And there are a lot of people who are coming with new way of working. And it's important for them to establish, but it's important for us to document the new way of working and share that to whoever concerned so that it becomes much more richer. So that's my high level point is, if there is any questions, please do drop us a line. As promised, the slides will be sent out and the FM summary report will also be sent out to you. Caution, that's based on, as I said, the end of February snapshot. Whenever you're free, come and talk to us. I'm more than happy to help. Any more questions? We still have 2 minutes. Or do you want me to call you out? I have, great to see some of you friends. There's Joe, John, thank you, Kevin, Lorena, Lily is here. Lucy, thank you. Mark, nice to see you, Mark, again. Matchup, thank you. So every single one of you, thank you for giving 1 hour of your life with addition to the tons and tons of webinars that you attend on a daily basis. Please do, thank you for joining and sharing 1 hour of your life. Peter, thank you. Oh, Peter as well, Peter Campbell. Rob, good to see you. Good luck with your MBA. So yes, Rupesh, thanks for joining. Every single one of you. Sunil, Tim, Tracy, thank you. Good luck with everything what you do. Please do stay healthy and I will speak to you very soon. Take good care. I'm giving you 1 minute back.